Hi Year 2. Today we are continuing with our learning about mass, and today we are measuring mass in grams again like yesterday.
Okay, so the things you will need today are your work from yesterday, your 2A workbook, some blank paper, any kind, a pencil and a partner, which can be an adult or one of your toys as before. Okay, so before we start today's lesson, we're going to have a little look at your work from yesterday and mark that carefully together. So on this page, we were measuring mass in grams and we had to find the mass of each object. So for question A, we should have got 200 grams, question B, 500 grams, question C, 700 grams, question D, 300 grams, question E, 150 grams, and question F, 450 grams. Okay, and then on the second page, instead of a regular weighing scale, we were shown some balance scales again, and again we were finding the mass of each object. So for question A, we should have got the football weighs about 500 grams, and we know that because in the picture we can see that there are 5 100-gram masses on this side. And if we do 5 times 100, we get 500 grams altogether. For question B, we should have had the mass of the loaf of bread is about 200 grams, because again, we can see that the mass on this side adds up to 300 grams. And over here, we've got a 50 gram and another 50 gram mass with our loaf of bread. If we know that 50 add 50 equals 100, then to find the mass of the bread, we needed to do 300 grams take away 100 grams, which gave us 200 grams. And lastly, question C, we should have got the mass of the box of cereal is about 500 grams. Okay, so on to our challenges from yesterday. Let's look at that mild challenge first. So we had to use these two pictures to find how much the beans weighs and then how much the pineapple weighs. Now when I looked at this first picture here, I could see that the beans on their own had a mass of 25 grams. So I filled that in straight away. The beans weighs 25 grams. Well done if you got that one. The second part of the question, I'm being asked to find how much the pineapple weighs. So I need to look at this second picture here. Now together, the beans and the pineapple weigh, let's have a look at that pointer, 55 grams. So in total, they weigh 55 grams. Now, if I know that the beans weighs 25 grams, I need to subtract 25 from the total to find the answer. So my number sentence said 55 grams take away 25 grams, and I got 30 grams as my answer. To get 30, first of all, I did 55 take away 20, which gave me 35. And then I took away the 5, and I did 35 grams take away 5 grams, which gave me 30 grams as my final answer. So our second challenge was our hot challenge, and it looked like this. So let me read it to you and then I'll show you what I did to get my answer. So it said one pear weighs 10 cubes. How much does one pineapple weigh? Explain how you know. Now before I tried to find how much one pineapple weighed, I needed to first figure out how many cubes this side weighed and how many cubes this side weighed too. So because I knew that one pear weighed 10 cubes, I needed to times 10 by 4 because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs on that side of the scale. So I wrote out a number sentence. I wrote out 10, add 10, add 10, add 10. Or I also could have written out 4 times 10 and I would have got the same answer, and that gave me 40 cubes altogether. So on this side of the scale there are 40 cubes worth of pairs. The mass is the same as 40 cubes. Then I needed to find the mass of the 2 pineapples, and by looking at my balance scale I saw straight away that this side was equal to this side. So I knew that this side of the scale would equal 40 cubes worth in mass too. But my answer isn't 40 because the questions asked me what does 1 pineapple weigh, and there are 2 here. So I needed to be really clever here and use my dividing to help me find the answer. So my number sentence said 40 divided by 2 equals 20. So 1 pineapple must weigh 20 cubes. And you might have been even more clever and noticed that half of 40 is 20. So you might not even have had to write out your division number sentence. And you also might have checked that by doing 2 times 20, which gives you 40. Well done if you managed to get there with that challenge. And the final challenge from yesterday, your spicy challenge, was a word problem that said there are 100 grams of chocolate chips in the bag. Sita uses 25 grams, Ben uses 35 grams, and we needed to find out how many grams of chocolate chips are left in the bag. Now I got 40 grams as my answer, and my working out is just over here, and I'm going to tell you how I did it. So I found that Sita and Ben use 60 grams of chocolate chips altogether. I knew that Sita used 25, so my number sentence said 25 grams, add, and I knew that Ben used 35 grams. So I did 25 grams, add 35 grams, which gave me 60 grams altogether. Now, I worked that out by partitioning that second number into tens and ones. So first I added my tens. I did 20 add 30, which gave me 50, and then I added my ones. 5 add 5, which gave me 10. Then I added my tens and my ones together to get my answer, which was 50 add 10, which gave me 60 grams altogether. So I know that they used 60 grams. However, the question asked me how many grams are left over once they've used them. So for that part, I need to look back at that total at the very start, which was 100 grams. So I needed to do 100 grams, take away what Sita and Ben had used, which was 60 grams, and that gave me 40 grams. And I checked my answer by doing the opposite, by using the inverse operation by adding 60 grams, add 40 grams, which gives me 100 grams. So my answer was that there were 40 grams left in the bag. Really super work if you managed to solve that one. Well done. Okay, let's get started with today's lesson then. Let's have a look at our in focus. So the question says, how could we find the mass of the mango? So let's look closely at this picture. The mango is over here on this scale, and we want to find the mass of this mango. So we need to read the scale by looking at the pointer. Now this scale is counting in intervals of 100. So if we start from 0, we know the first mark is going to be 100, so the second mark is going to be 200 grams. So we can say that the mass of the mango is about 200 grams. Now I'd like us to have a go at finding the mass of the bag of flour. So we're looking at this scale, this picture this time. How could we find the mass of the flour? Have a little think about it and look really closely at that scale. Now when we look at where the pointer is positioned, it isn't pointing at one of the markings, one of the numbers. It's actually pointing at a smaller number where there aren't any markings. So in this case, we need to count the smaller lines really carefully. And the picture has just shown you a zoomed in view, so you should be able to just about see those markings. Now, the smaller lines between the numbers are going up in intervals of 10. So if we count from 400, we can count 410, 420, 430, 440, 450, which is where the red pointer is pointing at. So we can say that the mass of the bag of flour is about 450 grams. And you may have jumped ahead of me slightly there and spotted that the red pointer is pointing exactly down the middle of 400 grams and 500 grams. And we know that 50 is the halfway interval to 100. So 450 is the halfway interval to 500. Here is another example. This time I want to know how we can find the mass of the potato. Again, the pointer isn't pointing at one of those numbers on the scale, it's pointing at the smaller lines again. So if we know that the smaller lines are going up in intervals of 10, we can count in tens again from 100 and we land on 150. Where the red pointer is pointing. So we can say that the mass of the potato is about 150 grams. Okay, and another example. Here we are finding the mass of the calculator by reading the scale and looking at the red pointer again. We can see that it's pointing at those smaller lines again, and we know that those are going up in intervals of 10 today. So if we look really closely, we can just about see that the red pointer's moved on one small line past 200 grams. So we can say the mass of the calculator is about 210 grams. Right, so before we move on to your guided practice for today, I want to give you a quick reminder about the units of measurement we've used so far this week. On Monday, we were measuring these heavier objects and we were using kilograms as our unit of measurement. Yesterday and today so far, we've been measuring lighter objects using a smaller unit of measurement, grams. So try to remember that when we're measuring heavier objects, we're using kilograms, and when we're measuring lighter objects, we're using grams. Okay, it is time for you to go off and do your guided practice with your partner in a moment. Let me really quickly show you what each question is asking you to do. So for question 1, you have got a balance scale and your job is to find the mass of this box of crisps or this packet of crisps. To do that, you need to do what we've been practicing this week, which is finding the total of the mass on this side to be able to know how much the crisps weigh on the other side. And a really quick reminder again to look at that red pointer because that's going to really help you. Question 2, you are reading these scales a bit like we just did together before this slide. So you're finding the mass of the carrots first, then the mass of the mushrooms. And in case you're struggling to see it yourself, just to let you know, this scale is counting in intervals of 100 like it was previously. And then the last question is slightly different. it asks you which scale should you use to find the following masses. So question A, the mass of a box of tissues, and question B, the mass of a large sack of rice. And I don't want to give too much away, but look really closely at the scale on that side and then the scale on this side to decide which one is correct for measuring tissues and which one is correct for measuring the rice. So I expect this will take you between 5 and 10 minutes. Good luck! Okay, super work year 2. Let's have a look at those together and mark them as we go through. So for question 1, we needed to find the total mass on this side to know what the mass of the packet of crisps was. So to find the answer, we needed to add together 50 grams, 20 grams and 10 grams. Now if I do 50 add 20, I get 70. And then if I add another 10, I get 80 grams altogether. So the mass of the packet of crisps is about 80 grams. Question 2, the mass of the carrots is about 150 grams. Now you can see that if you look really closely, the red pointer is pointing halfway between the 100 mark and the 200 mark, which means it has a mass of 150 grams. The mass of the mushrooms is about 250 grams because again it's pointing directly between the 200 gram mark and the 300 gram mark. Really well done if you got both of those right. If not, don't worry, just pop a C next to them and come back to them at a later date. Question 3, we needed to choose which scale would be correct to find the mass of each object. So for the tissues, we should have chosen this scale on this side. Why? Because a box of tissues is a lighter object, so we need a scale that's measuring in grams, not kilograms like it is over here. For B, the mass of a large sack of rice, we needed to use this scale because it's counting up in kilograms. And we know that rice is a heavier object, so we can measure its mass using kilograms. Well done, everyone. Okay, so it's already time for you guys to do your independent work for today. Today you're working in your workbooks again, and you're doing 3 pages. But I want you to listen really carefully to which pages I'd like you to do today. I'd like you to do page 193, 194 and 196. So you'll notice that we are skipping page 195. So just double check those page numbers again before you start. Also, don't forget to add today's date, 13.05.20 at the top of your page. Now let's have a quick look at these pages. So on the first page, you're finding the mass of each object in grams and you're reading these scales. Just to let you know, as they were earlier on in the lesson, the scales are counting in intervals of 100. And I think all of them are pointing at the smaller lines on the scale again. So you're going to have to use your counting in tens to help you and your beady eyes to look really closely at those scales. The second page, you've got balance scales to read and you're finding the mass of each object again. So remember to find the mass of the weight on this side to know what the mass of the object on the other side is. And then the last page, you need to circle the correct answer for each object. So for example, the first one, you've got a picture of a dog and it says the mass of a dog is about 20 grams or 20 kilograms. And you're going to choose which one you think is the right answer and put a circle around it. Good luck! And then finally, year 2, we do have some optional challenges for you to have your best go at again today. The first next one is completing page 195 in your workbook, and your job is to fill in the blanks for the 3 different sentences to match with the pictures above. And here you're having to use your subtraction skills to be able to find the answers. So just make sure that you're reading those sentences really carefully and you're looking really carefully at the pictures too. The second challenge is, which is heavier, the red or the green beanbag? Give your reasoning. And give your reasoning means show me your working out and explain to me how you know and how you found your answer. Again, look really carefully at the 2 pictures. Look at that pointer on the scale and make sure you write down all of that working out so that you can work systematically through and so that you can show us on Dojo how you solved it. Best of luck, and I'll see, well, I won't see, but I'll see you all virtually tomorrow for our next lesson.